Hey, happy Friday everybody, and welcome back to the channel. This is Juice. So in an effort to close out the Case 3 SuperCarrier module or video with the F-A-18 module, we're going to close out today with the final video in the series, the WAVEOFF and BOLTER video. And again, this is not to emphasize how to do it as a perfection or with experience. This is how I practice it. This is how I do research to be able to do it better so I can present it to you guys, and only in an encouragement to get involved and learn for yourself all the different details on how to do this procedure, case 3 recovery process, and also dig into the references, because you guys might find more than I was able to find just by doing the research. So be sure to leave some comments if you guys did find some other stuff helpful that you might be able to share with us. Put some links to some references, other videos. We welcome that here on the channel. As a matter of fact, one of the mission statements we made in the Air Warfare group is we would never try to recreate any content that was already covered elsewhere better than we could do it. Now, and again, I want to say this video is not a tutorial, it's not instructional, it's just an example of how you can practice, and hopefully it encourages you guys that haven't tried Case 3 yet to get into it and see if you can do it. I've even got a mission that you can download if you want to try it on Persian Gulf. So here we go. So in research for this, I went into my #1 resource, the DCS SuperCarrier guide, which is always a work in progress. I added on to that knowledge or that information with the CB Procedures, which is the PE816 pamphlet or the manual, and it basically is the T-45CV training procedures for naval aviators, what they used to go through before Project Avenger came about. If you guys want to know more about Project Avenger, just Google it or go over to the Sinatra site and read the news blip about it. And then the final reference that I'm going to mention today too is the NATOP CV manual that we'll cover in detail a little bit later. So the first reference, as mentioned, is the SuperCarrier DCS guide. Now this is what it says right out of the blurb. It just has this paragraph is the last paragraph for the section before you move on, and it says, in the event of a WAVEOFF or boulder, climb to 1,200 feet at 150 knots and raise the gear to save fuel, leaving the flaps down. You might want to go ahead and leave your hook down too. When instructed by approach, turn downwind. Perform landing checks on downwind and notify approach of your fuel state when abeam the ship. Expect to turn back final at 4 to 8 nautical miles past abeam for another approach, lowering the landing gear as you start this final turn. So what you're going to do is you're going to actually, because DCS doesn't contact you and tell you, talk you back into the groove, you're going to basically say, hey, you know, if nobody's in the traffic pattern, if you're not flying with any of your buddies that are on the final or on approach, you can go ahead and turn anytime after 4 miles, and that's what I usually do, and you'll see that in the video here. So there's some takeaways from this. The first one that you'll notice right off the bat that is probably pretty important is what speed do we want to be. We want to be about 150 knots. What altitude are we going to climb up to? Well, it's stated there 1,200 feet. We're going to climb up to 1,200 feet. Now we don't need to rush to 1,200 feet. We're just going to do a nice climb at 150 knots, 1,200 feet. Don't want to do it too shallow, don't want to do too steep. Remember to raise the gear only. That's to reduce drag and increase your fuel rate, or lower your fuel consumption rate, which is really important on a Case 3 because you may have to pull out of the weather and go hit a tanker before you can come back in and try it again. And then finally, expect to turn on your final and lower your gear back at when you're about 4 to 8 nautical miles past a beam. And this again was the SuperCarrier guide from DCS. Now the next reference that I'm going to talk about is the CV Sinatra guide from the T-45 series. And this one, it talks about the WAVEOFF or boulder, and I'm not gonna read this verbatim, but you can see some of the similar things. You can see the 1,200 feet, 150 knots, the raise the gear to save fuel, leaving the flaps down. Remember to leave your hook down too. And again, you can see all those different references I just mentioned right there. Just squared them up. And again, this is from the PE816CB Procedures. You can get this at the PatPub's website. It's an open source available for open to the public to use that. Definitely recommend you bookmark that and go over and see what kind of Navy publications you can train with in DCS. The final reference that we're going to talk about today is the NAVAIR 00-80 Tango 105, and that is the CV NATOPS manual. And that one's pretty much, I mean, into the weeds, nuts and bolts of CVA operations. Don't know how current it is. I'm sure it's been superseded by a couple of volumes, a couple versions by now, but it's really good to dig in there and, you know, extrapolate what you can from it. You know, take out, you know, if you find information that jives with other resources, go ahead and put those into your little SOPs, your personal SOPs or your unit SOPs if you're part of a group that flies. And you know what, as long as everybody is flying a reasonable pattern and they're all following the same rules, there's nothing different than what the real world does based on what you can do in your sim group or just in your own personal sim time and stuff. So moving along, let's go to the video replay now, and I will close this out. And now here we are, we're at the ramp. Okay, I'm going to hit play. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm just going to let you see some of the things. Watch for some of the speeds and altitudes mentioned, and just look for some of the cues, and I'll try to talk as briefly as I can on this. Here we go, ready to hit play. Alright, we missed the wire. Going to hit the bolter. Look at that, we're coming up off the boat. Immediately I raise the gear. Instinctively I turn over to BRC of the ship, not the final approach course. I'm going BRC, but I don't want to cross the center line of the boat. And then at about 400 feet, thereabouts, I'm at 360 now, I go ahead and start my turn. Notice the speed, about 151. And remember that target altitude, 1,200 feet. Final approach course was 346, so our reciprocal heading on the downwind is going to be 166 degrees. Slowly inching over there. Approaching 900 feet, still at 150 knots. And reciprocal on the beam of the boat now, 1.4. Passing 11, I'm going to start slowing down a little bit on speed so that we don't float too far over 1200. And again, once you hit 1200 AGL, manage your speed to keep your velocity vector on the horizon line in the HUD. You can see the benefit of having your course line put in on your HSI page. Gives you a little picture where you can fly parallel. Make sure you hit that chiclet in the top center to bring it down to 5 nautical miles. But honestly, however you want to set up your cockpit, whatever works best for you to enjoy this, do it that way. You can barely see the ship back there between the V. Okay, there we're at about 4.3. At 4.5, I'm going to go start my turn, and the gear comes down. Remember, if you haven't seen the Case 1 series that we have, watch that. It'll tell you about all the particulars about what your cockpit setting is for lights and switches and configuration. And all of that is assumed that you've already done that training before you join Case 3. So, and we just went over 4.4 miles. That was our farthest distance from the TACAN station on the ship. And we're slowly going back over to the approach course to pick up the needles. You can see we overfloat the center line a little bit. So when I come across 346 degrees, I'm going to actually fly past 346 to bring us back course left and get back into our lineup. I'm going to try to hold the velocity vector on the horizon as much as I can until that horizontal line on the glide slope comes down. And I'm going to hold this course here a few degrees off to the left of my final approach course, just so that we can get to the point where it's going to line up in the center of the velocity vector. A couple of people informed me in the last couple videos that this system is not working in DCS, but you can still practice it pretty easily. Still gives you some indication, and a lot of times you end up landing on the deck anyway. So, all right, there's our needles. We're flying the needles now. We're at 3 miles, just outside of 3 miles. We're going to fly the approach. Guys, that was the video. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here. We'll go outside, take a couple screenshots. Woohoo! And let's go into the LSO station. Drag that Eiffels out of there. And let's see. Hit pause. Look at that. Can't see the aircraft yet. Pretty far out. Hey, well, that concludes the SuperCarrier Case 3 series, guys. I hope you like this. Be sure to share it with a friend. If you did like it, consider subscribing. Hit that like button. And also put something in the comments. Let us know what you think. Also, let us know what your experience is practicing this, some successes or pitfalls to watch out for. We appreciate feedback, and we like you guys to be a part of the conversation here at the Air Warfare Group. For Tyro and all the other guys, have a great weekend, and you guys be safe. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers.